This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcasting Network. I am your host, Josh Strickland, here on this wonderful Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And if you are not a mother, but you have a mother, which I'm pretty sure 100% of people have a mother of some sort. Make sure to wish your mom a happy Mother's Day, you know? So we have a interesting show with you today. It's mostly about, you know, the same old, which is, well, not the same old, but the new old, if that makes sense at all. We're talking about MLB changing their draft because of the coronavirus. We're talking about the NBA. They're called the Players Association because of the coronavirus. We'll talk about the NFL schedule being released and what the NFL is going to do if the coronavirus continues into the fall. We'll also talk about Cam Newton still not being signed to an NFL team, possibly because of the coronavirus. And then we'll do a draft recap on the Detroit Lions, going over their draft and how they did. First, we're going to talk about the one of the only sporting events, the non Korean baseball sporting event from last night, which was UFC 249. UFC 249. It was controversial, of course. They fought in Florida, and it's controversial because they're pretty much the only American sports league that's going on right now, and there's a lot of controversy about where it would be taking place because of COVID-19 concerns, how everything would work out. UFC 249 took place at the empty VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena in Jacksonville, Florida, which it's very fitting that it happened in Jacksonville. That's just me, just you know. But one of their fights got called off Friday because one of their fighters tested positive for COVID-19, igniting a lot more questions about whether or not the card should take place or any of this should have taken place in general. That, of course, was the fight pitting Ronaldo Souza against Uriah Hall. Souza tested positive for COVID-19. So there was a lot of backlash to this UFC event. But at the end of the day, you still have a bunch of people who are very, 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 very starved for any kind of sports content, any kind of live television content. I actually found out that the Pro Bull Riding League, PBR, they are still doing events. Like, they had an event Saturday as well, and it was live, I'm pretty sure, on Fox or CBS Sports or whatever. It was an actual live event, and it was bull riding. But anyways, so honestly, looking at this card, it's not a very interesting card to look at from a normal person point of view. By normal person, I mean a non-hardcore MMA fan, a casual fan. Even saying I'm a casual fan is a bit extreme because, like I said, I mentioned on here before, I really only pay attention to MMA when there's like a huge money-making fight going on and everybody's hyping it up. So this card I did not hear much about. The only stuff I heard about this card was the COVID-19 and coronavirus concerns, and that's not really some. I mean, there's no such thing as bad press if you subscribe to that theory, but at the end of the day, the only reason I heard about this was because it was the only sporting event on, and there was a lot of controversy, and of course you had the one guy test positive. Actually, I think it was up to like 3 guys test positive for COVID-19 at this event by itself. But it was very interesting to watch. They had each announcer, each commentator on a different table. They were far apart. They were testing the temperature of each fighter before each fight even started, which was the smart move to do. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, because if you don't have a temperature, I mean, there's very unlikely that you have it, but I mean, there's still a little slight chance, but it's very unlikely. I mean, we don't really have a better way to do a quick test than that at the moment, which of course, if you've been paying attention to the news, I mean, you can have the coronavirus without having any symptoms. You need to have to take an actual coronavirus test, but it's better than nothing. Like I've mentioned before, it's better than nothing. It's better than just kind of like throwing them all out there for, no reason. So let's get into the card. The first fight, the heavyweight fight, I'm talking about the main card, not the prelims. I did watch the prelims. I did not watch the main card. I watched some of the prelims. I did not watch any of the main card except for some highlights. But, I mean, this is just going to be some general thoughts. Because like I've told y'all before, I don't watch MMA. I couldn't give you good analysis even if I did watch this whole event. But anyways, so first you had the heavyweight fight with Greg Hardy versus Yorgan De Castro. Greg Hardy defeats Castro by unanimous decision. This win builds some momentum for Greg Hardy, who is a former NFL player, former Dallas Cowboy, former Carolina Panther. He kind of got kicked out of the NFL for some domestic violence issues, and there's some people saying that he should not even be in the UFC, but he is because of his name, and I wouldn't necessarily say star power, but his ability to gain attention from the mainstream media, I guess, would be a great way to do that. But Castro, one of Castro's kicks missed in the second round, and that messed up his right foot, and that completely changed the complexion of the entire second round, where Greg Hardy capitalized on it. Castro did outwork Hardy mostly, but Hardy pushed the action, and the judges rewarded him doing that. So Hardy is now 6-2 in the UFC, ends the undefeated run for De Castro. Like I said, Castro injured his toe in the second round. It was a tough opening act. Then we go to the catchweight fight, which I have no idea what the catchweight is. I've never heard of that term, but whatever. Calvin Kattar versus Jeremy Stevens. Calvin Kattar defeats Jeremy Stevens by knockout halfway through the second round. He rocked Stevens with a ferocious right elbow and pummeled him on the map. Swelling on Stevens' left leg forced him to change stances, and Kattar continued to develop a well-balanced attack, especially with boxing combinations. So Kattar felt extremely disrespected by Stevens, coming in nearly 5 pounds overweight, but he's vindicated by it with this knockout victory. So Kattar now 21-4 in the UFC. Then we got another heavyweight fight with Francis Ngannou versus Rosenstruck. I'm not even going to try to say that first name. Good Lord. Ngannou wins by knockout. This lasted 20 seconds. Saw this all over Twitter and Reddit and stuff like that. I mean, Rosenstruck called out Ngannou for a fight, which are words he would love to have back. Ngannou, 15-3, knocked him out in only 20 seconds. Ngannou now waits for the winner of the Stipe Miocic Daniel Cormier fight for the heavyweight championship, likely to happen later this summer, so that's something to kind of look forward to there. The bantamweight championship fight, Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz. Cejudo defeats Dominic Cruz by TKO. It's a very controversial moment of the night that took place in the second round, as the referee had a stoppage that cut the bout short. Cejudo hit Cruz with a brutal knee, then 10 more shots, but Cruz was standing up when the referee stopped the fight and awarded the win to Cejudo by TKO. Then Cejudo announced his retirement in the octagon, going out on top with a victory there. Cruz Cruz was, of course, not happy with it. He was pleading his case to Dana White. So, a little controversy there. And then we move on to the interim lightweight championship fight, Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. Gaethje defeats Tony Ferguson by TKO. He fought an extremely smart fifth round, crushing Ferguson to the point where a referee stoppage was needed to end the fight. It's not a surprise that Gaethje won the fight, but it is shocking he would dominate the fight for 24 minutes as he is the new interim lightweight champion. So that's a basic synopsis, basic recap of UFC 249. When we come back, we'll talk about the MLB changing their draft up, and why some people in the baseball industry are not happy about it at all when we return.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So the MLB, as they are attempting to they are proposing new plans. They're meeting tomorrow to discuss the comeback of Major League, or the start of the Major League Baseball season, how they're going to start ramping things up. That's supposedly going to happen tomorrow, and we'll discuss that more on Tuesday, as we might have a more concrete plan of what the MLB is going to do. But we are going to talk about right now what they're going to do with their amateur draft, the 2020 Major League Amateur Draft. Now, if you don't follow the MLB, or you don't know anything about the MLB draft, it sucks. It's very uninteresting. It's 40 rounds long. Some the teams themselves get bored in it. Like, I'm pretty sure Johnny Manziel gets drafted every year or something like that. Some teams just get bored and they just draft players just to draft players. Like, there's no reason to draft some of the players that they do draft. And most teams view like the later picks as just ways to fill up their minor league system. So, to catch some people up about what is going on with Major League Baseball, they're trying to. There is a huge movement going on now where Major League Baseball might cut some minor league teams. There's a list of 40 or so minor league teams, and Major League Baseball wants to cut the minor leagues in general because there's been concerns about paying minor league players. So the MLB's solution to getting higher wages for minor league players is getting rid of some minor league teams to kind of cut costs and make it so if you are in the minors, then you make a decent livable wage. So because of that, the MLB wants to also cut the draft, which there's entertainment purposes behind cutting the draft as well, is because if you cut the draft down to where they want it to cut it, it makes it a little bit more entertaining, I suppose. But here's what it is. The 2020 MLB amateur draft will be 5 rounds long. It's the smallest in baseball's entire illustrious history. People with knowledge of the decision said Friday. It will be held on June 10th and 11th. 5 is the fewest number of rounds the clubs are allowed to draft this year, per a March agreement with the Players Association governing the sport during the COVID-19 shutdown. That agreement lays out other conditions for the draft, including signing bonuses that will be equivalent to 2019. So after the 5th round, teams can sign an unlimited number of undrafted players for a maximum bonus of $20,000. MLB wanted to reduce the size of the draft, which lasts 40 rounds in a normal season, as a cost savings measure. The March agreement stipulated the draft could be held at any length between 5 and 40 rounds, but the expectation was it would not hold a draft longer than 10 rounds. So the commissioner's office made a proposal to the union that would have solidified a 10-round draft, but it came with other trade-offs the Players Association determined were too restrictive, including slot amounts in rounds 6 through 10 at half their 2019 values, and a limit of 5 undrafted players who could sign for $20,000. The union rejected that proposal. So staging a 10-round draft with full values in rounds 6 through 10 would have cost approximately $1 million per team, but some teams viewed even that cost to be too much. The draft represents different issues converging. While drafted players represent the future of the sport, they do not immediately help teams with the sport generating minimal revenue. Some clubs signal they preferred to use the bonus money to continue paying employees. Still, a number of club officials would have preferred a longer draft because drafted players represent low-cost investments that can pay off handsomely. So basically, let's talk about that. So there have been very few baseball players in the past decade or so that have made an immediate impact on a team after they got drafted. I mean, Bryce Harper and Mike Trout, they are the best examples I can think of. And Steven Strasburg, they're the best examples I can think of where they came up when they were like 19 or something like that. I think Mike Trout maybe was 20 or 21. But even then, they spent at least 1 year in minor leagues. So in baseball, I mean, it's a developmental process. That's why baseball has a minor league and the NFL does not. The NFL, if you get drafted in the NFL, you're expected to help right now. In baseball, they understand that, catching up to the major league game and stuff like that, it's difficult, especially going from college. And people just really like baseball, so there's a lot more baseball to go around. And there's also a lot of players involved in a baseball organization. However, in football, you only have 50 or so, and then you have the practice squad. NBA, they're trying to do it with the G League, which the G League is still not like the G League is more considered a different league in the public eye than minor league baseball teams are, where they have affiliations and stuff like that, and you feel a real sense of pride. Like, for instance, I live in Greenville, South Carolina. There's a lot of people here that are Red Sox fans just because the Greenville minor league team is a Red Sox affiliate. So, stuff like that. But how could the 5-round draft hurt players and pro baseball as a whole? So with the current financial situation and uncertainty of when or if we will see baseball this year, as well as the likelihood that we'll see little to no minor league baseball this summer, some reduction in the draft made sense from a player development standpoint, and it saves MLB teams some cash in the short term. But this decision to essentially draft and sign as few players as possible could have significant long-term consequences for players and teams alike, most of them not good. The most obvious impact is that we'll see a lot of good players who have some major league potential go undrafted this year. So here's some examples of guys who were drafted past round 5 that did really well. You got Paul Goldschmidt. He was drafted in round 8. Jacob deGrom, round 9. They were both drafted after the 5th round out of 4-year colleges. At the time, they were not seen as good prospects to go in the top 150 picks, even though history has shown they were among the very best players in their respective draft classes. In the 5-round draft, college juniors like Goldschmidt and DeGrom would have been undrafted and left to choose whether to sign as free agents or a relative pittance, which is $20,000 a year, go back to school and come back as seniors / 4th-year juniors, potentially get $5,000 or less if they didn't improve their standing, or go play independent ball and hope to boost their value. All of those options are worse than what such players would have gotten in the normal draft, and we risk losing players entirely. There's a huge ripple effect from players who expected to sign going back to school or going to college from high school. Division I schools only have 11.7 scholarships per team. Coaches plan to distribute those under the assumption that some juniors will not return for their senior year and that some of their top recruits will never reach campus. Some members of both groups will now be at school fighting for the same playing time and the same limited scholarships, which will squeeze some players out of lineups, out of scholarships, or off rosters entirely. So this could be a boon for junior college baseball, at least where such schools still have the resources to operate teams next spring, as they could welcome any top high school prospects who aren't drafted and offer them the chance to play for 1 year and re-enter the draft in 2021. Playing time wouldn't be an issue. These schools cost far less than most 4-year colleges. MLB team scouts would have a field day as well, since junior colleges don't have TrackMan or similar systems in place. And the performance stats we get from those levels include widely varying degrees of competition. Of course, this just amounts to kicking the can down the road. The next 3 draft classes will collect the spillover from this year, as some high school prospects will go to 4-year colleges and stay until 2023, while others will go to 2-year schools. Some college juniors, draft eligible sophomores, will come back out in 21 and 22. That's all good for MLB teams who will have a stronger draft classes next year and beyond, and thus will have more potential leverage to try to negotiate discounted bonuses with picks, especially beyond the top of the 1st round. But it's bad for players who might be fighting for playing time in school and then turning around and competing with a larger than expected pool of players in the draft. So there is a lot of negatives when it comes to the players in this whole thing, because one, a whole lot less of them are getting drafted in general, and then you have all the college issues that I just listed off there. Of course, you can go to junior college, but you got a lot of guys who are coming from a 4-year university. Maybe they're seniors, and more than likely they would be drafted in like the 10th round or the 9th round or something like that. Now they go undrafted. So it's going to be that sucks. And they have no chance of coming back to college to play another year, so they're forced to kind of play for an independence team, which we don't even know what the status of independent teams are going to be, especially, under all of the duress that we are in right now in the sports world. So this is an interesting thing. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. It's going to be interesting to see how teams draft. I feel like they're going to be a little bit more picky with their draft picks. There's going to be a lot less chances taken on high school kids and stuff like that. We'll just have to find out. But when we return, we'll talk about the NBA. They had a recent call with the Players Association to talk about what's next in the MLB. And I'll give you a quick rundown of that when we return.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So we've been discussing for the past months how the NBA will come back, and what capacity will they come back. Will they just will they continue the season and finish off the games in the season, or will they go straight to the playoffs? How would the playoff format look? How would anything look? Will we have fans? Will we have will it be played in a bubble in Disney World or Vegas? Will it be played? Would teams be able to travel? Are we just going to lock everybody down somewhere that allows us to lock them down? There's a lot of unanswered questions. The MBPA held a call with NBA players on Friday that included an update from the league office and Commissioner Adam Silver. And here's what you should know following the call. Here's what we're going to. This is just basic bullet points. We're going to discuss some pretty big topics here. So let's go ahead and kick it off. So if the 2019-20 season resumes, no fans are expected, and that could be the case as long as there's no vaccine. So if we're going by the vaccine thing, there might not be a vaccine until this time next year. So that means if the NBA comes back for the 2021 season, whenever they come back, then they will still play with no fans. That's according to this call, so we'll see if that holds up still. Next, 40% of the league's revenue comes from fans, whether that be ticket revenue or merchandise, stuff like that. So having no fans is a huge hit to the NBA's revenue, to the entire league's revenue, but they still have the majority of their revenue is still TV contracts, so it is in their best interest to play games whether or not fans are there or not. We've discussed that before plenty of times. A decision on the season can go into June, so they're going to wait. It seems like they're going to wait until June to make a official decision. Maybe they're kind of working things out right now. They just want to play it safe by saying the season can go into June. I think best case scenario at this moment in time is that the season can start, or they can do like a couple warm-up games at the end of June, start the playoffs in July. I think that's the best case scenario right now, but what do I know? If/when NBA is able to return, Adam Silver told players it is safer in one or two locations, such as Walt Disney World in Orlando and Las Vegas, than it would be to fly around to cities and facilities, which that makes a lot of sense. You'd rather keep everyone in one place at one time. It will be quicker. You can knock games out, so the postseason doesn't last that long. And also, you cut down on traveling costs for some of these teams, and also you cut down on exposure to different people, like flying in a plane to go to different cities. You're seeing different hotel staffs and stuff like that. I mean, keeping in one city holds everything into that one city. So if something if there is another breakout, another wave, if you will, then at least they know it's there. You don't have to worry about what if they got it from this hotel or whatever such. So that is a good move in my opinion, to keep it in one space, especially if they're just doing the playoffs. I mean, that it makes sense to me. NBA is sifting through a lot of bad options, meaning whatever route the resumption could take place is less than ideal. I feel like no matter what route you take, it's going to be less than ideal. I mean, that's kind of a given in my opinion. Everything you do is going to be less than ideal. The ideal thing is to have a normal NBA playoffs with fans and stuff like that. Like we would be doing it right now, but I digress, I guess. But the NBA is projecting a 1-year timetable on a coronavirus vaccine. Silver emphasized that the league collectively will have to deal with the coronavirus issue for the foreseeable future, and that no decision will be risk-free, which, once again, makes sense. If you want to try to do this, there is some risk involved. You can't guarantee players won't get sick. You can't guarantee that staff won't get sick. You can't guarantee that TV crews won't get sick. It's very tough to promise something that you can't, justifiably promise, so that's understandable. Silver admitted the NBA couldn't start now even if we wanted to, which that's interesting. This whole time you're thinking that, maybe they could start right now. They're just kind of thinking of ways around it, but Silver said they couldn't start now even if they wanted to, so that's interesting. It doesn't really elaborate more on that in these notes, so it's just very interesting that he specifically said that. NBA teams will be told again that it is voluntary for players to work out and pressure should not be applied. NBPA President Chris Paul and Vice President Kyrie Irving told Silver that some players have been feeling pressure from teams to return to facilities, and that should not be the case, to which Silver agreed and stated any other concerns should be made to the league and NBPA. So, apparently some teams have been pressuring their players to come back to the facilities and work out, which it's completely optional to return to the facilities if you can return to the facilities. Like I mentioned before, I think half the league team can go to their facilities right now, but the other 15 can't. But these are completely voluntary. They do not have to go to the facilities, but apparently some teams have been pressuring these players to go. I'm very interested in what teams are doing that. They're, of course, not going to tell us, but I am interested in teams that are doing that, because that's just very unfair of them to ask of their players to do that, especially if they're uncomfortable with going to the facility at this moment in time. Silver admitted there would be a significant impact for the league financially if there is no season, and then no fans attending games in 2020-21 season, which makes sense. We went over that. Significant impact, especially if there is no season, because of TV revenue, and the no fans revenue sucks, but the TV revenue is more important than the fans attending games, I should say. According to Silver, the league would look into other interactive ways to get fans engaged. That interests me, because maybe they can do a little bit more live streams and maybe do some cool fan voting stuff going on. Just interesting ways to get fans involved. The NFL kind of were on the right track with it with the NFL draft, but in my opinion, I think Roger Goodell made it a little awkward by trying to pump up the big TV on his wall and all these people that did not look like they were interested in anything he was saying. They just looked like they were told to cheer, and they're like, yay, and stuff like that. So the NFL explored that a little bit, but it didn't really work out. But the NBA usually does fan engagement really well, so it'd be very interesting to see how the NBA goes through with that. When asked about a potential second wave of the virus in the fall, Silver said that is why a delayed start to the 2020-21 season makes sense. Silver referenced a Christmas Day start. Sources said December 25th start of the 2020-21 season is gaining some momentum. So, it makes sense if you start the playoffs in mid-July. That gives the players enough time to take a nice break. And I mean, they're taking a break right now, but I mean, it gives an actual off season, gives for teams to kind of sign, do free agency and stuff like that. Enough time to get an actual off season and enough time for everyone to go back and work out and get ready for the season. The ever elusive question across pro sports is this: what happens if a player tests positive again? Silver responded that he hopes the NBA will be able to administer daily testing at that point, have no stoppage of play, and isolate the players in quarantine. Silver cited a potential 2-day break as well. Silver stated any decision would need to be worked out with the NBPA, and he has spoken to the MLB commissioner Rob Manfred about a protocol. So all these big guys, all these commissioners of every league are trying to figure out ways. They're trying to figure it out. They're working together to figure it out, which makes sense. But the daily testing, that's going to be a hard sell for me because, I mean, it's kind of unfair because normal people do not have daily testing. So these professional athletes getting daily testing will be kind of unfair. Like we mentioned with the UFC, they're doing the temperature test, which of course is not good enough. But also, I don't think we have tests good enough to do daily testing at the moment in time. Then a 3 to 6 week ramp up period is expected should the NBA be able to resume the season, and the NBA prefers to have full 4-round, 7-game per series postseason. So if we have a 3 to 6 week ramp up period, and they don't start until July, then late July would be the start of the playoffs. And I don't know what the ramp up period would even look like, such as would it be warm up games? Would it be just training camp? Stuff like that. So there's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of buts. So at the end of the day, we have a better idea of what the NBA is going to do, but there's still a lot of questions to be answered. When we come back, we'll talk about the NFL schedule finally getting released. As the NFL plan, it doesn't look like they're changing any plans so far, but we'll discuss some interesting games on the NFL schedule when we come back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So the NFL, they finally, by finally, I mean they released their schedule for the upcoming season. And there's a lot of speculation about what the NFL was planning on doing because the NFL hasn't really made any official rulings of what they're going to do for the season. But it looks like, according to the schedule that they just released, everything is going according to plan except for the international games that they've already announced that they canceled. So there's no games in London. There's no games in Mexico City. But other than that, it looks like the full regular season schedule, according to the release of the full regular season schedule, everything is going according to plan for the NFL. The NFL schedule is completely normal. It's not pushed back. Of course, there's some caveats here. We have no idea whether the NFL is going to have a full regular season or not. We have no idea if Week 1 is going to take place when they want Week 1 to take place. I'm still on the stance that it's way too early to make a decision on football season. And clearly the NFL is also on that same stance, as these are all scheduled to begin in September. So, I mean, good for them, I suppose. Well, here we go. I'm going to dive into it. I have 13 interesting games on this regular season schedule that we're going to go over. You can consider them the most interesting, or you can find them more relevant. primetime type games, stuff like that. So let's just get right into it. So week 3, we're starting off with a doozy in week 3. We got Chiefs at Ravens. This is Monday Night Football. This is guaranteed to be a barn burner, in my opinion. Finally, like Monday Night Football, we've kind of had a bunch of crappy Monday Night Football games in the past. Here you have Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, two of the most exciting players in the NFL. They square off, and it's probably going to be for a top spot there in the AFC. But last year, it's not just the quarterbacks here. Both teams are 24-8 in the regular season over the last 2 years. Vegas has the Chiefs as the favorites to win the Super Bowl, and the Ravens are second in the favorite there. These teams met in week 3 last season. Mahomes threw for 374 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 33-28 victory. John Harbaugh took an analytical approach with his decision-making in that game, and even though the Ravens lost, he didn't waver the rest of the season, as Baltimore just lost one more time in the next 14 weeks. So this is kind of a no-brainer. You have the 2018 MVP versus the 2019 MVP, two very exciting young players, and two teams that are both still going to be high up there, big-time players in the playoffs whenever we do have a season. Next up, we have Week 15, Chiefs at Saints. This is a Week 15 Sunday matchups, 4:25. It might get flexed to 8 to be the night game here, but the Week 11 matchup between the Chiefs and the Rams in 2018 was probably the greatest regular season game of that decade, where two 9-1 teams combined for 105 points, 1,001 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 56 first downs. It's the only game during the Super Bowl era in which both teams reached 50-plus points. Now, Chiefs at Saints in 2020 has that potential. Both teams had top 5 offenses a year ago. Sean Payton and Andy Reid are two of the greatest offensive coaches in this era. Mahomes at the peak of his powers against Drew Brees, who might be in his last year, looking for that last Super Bowl run. So that has the potential to be a very high-powered offensive game. Week 1, you have Buccaneers at Saints. It doesn't really matter who the Buccaneers are playing. It's Tom Brady in a new uniform for the first time in his career, in a different uniform other than the New England Patriots. So that alone is going to make this a big-time matchup. But you also have the storyline of Drew Brees versus Tom Brady, both quarterbacks potentially in their last years of their careers. They're both in the same division now. It's a big-time divisional matchup to start it off. The Buccaneers had a hell of an offseason. The Saints are just building on what they already had, and they're looking to make that Super Bowl run this year. Week 9, Packers at 49ers. This is a Thursday night game in Week 9. It's a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game, which frankly wasn't very entertaining, but maybe this version will be better. A lot of possibilities for how this one could go down. Jimmy Garoppolo lights off the Packers. Maybe we see Aaron Rodgers passive-aggressively mention afterward that San Francisco has really helped itself in recent years by using draft picks on wide receivers like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. If Garoppolo plays poorly, maybe we get a should the 49ers trade for Rodgers after the season segment on First Take, which would be very, very entertaining. So this is kind of just a great game for, seeing a storm, something like that happen. Week 1, Dolphins at Patriots. This is a Sunday game at 1 o'clock. This one's really only interesting because it's the first chance to get a look at the Patriots post-Brady, see if Bill Belichick and Jarrett Stidham have what it takes to get past all the stigma around this post-Tom Brady world. And also, it could be the debut of Tua Tagovailoa, which I highly doubt it will be, but it could be, so that could add some more interest in it. But it's going to be interesting to see how Stidham plays and how the Patriots do overall, especially since their offense kind of is looking right now. Week 16, Eagles at Cowboys, Sunday, December 27th at 4:25. This could get flexed to a nighttime game because this could easily be for the division here. William Hill has the Cowboys as slight favorites over the Eagles in the NFC East. There's a pretty good chance this game could go a long way in determining who wins the division. Last year, Week 16 matchup between the teams was essentially the division championship game. For the Eagles, You could see Carson Wentz weeping on the sideline as he watches Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup make catches all over the field for Dak Prescott. For the Cowboys, you could see Mike McCarthy viewing this as an opportunity to prove the world that he's Mr. Analytics. Maybe he waits for the camera to zoom in on him in the fourth quarter before breaking out a TI-82 calculator. Who knows? So that's potentially going to be for the division there. Week 7, Seahawks at Cardinals, Sunday, October 25th, 4:05. Seahawks play crazy games every week, so it really was just a matter of choosing the right opponent. There's a really good chance the Cardinals end up emerging as the best red zone channel teams in the NFL. You got Kyler Murray, who throws a beautiful deep ball. They ranked 13th in offensive efficiency last year, which not a lot of people know that because the Cardinals were still pretty bad. Now they added DeAndre Hopkins in this offseason, and really the entire NFC West is just going to be insane to watch. But this one, you have the Kyler Murray for his Russell Wilson factor that makes it a little bit more entertaining. Week 14, Texans at Bears, and this goes into the recent drama that has been going on where Deshaun Watson said that the Bears never even called him. You have all the controversy around the Bears quarterback position with Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. So this is kind of more of a, if you don't like the Bears, this is the game to watch, because I'm sure Deshaun Watson's going to have a couple great plays in this game to kind of, make the Bears wish they drafted him instead of Mitchell Trubisky. Week 16, Colts at Steelers. This is Sunday, December 27th at 1 p.m. If in the past year you tweaked your back simply by getting out of bed or thought about the best way to trim your ear hair, this is your Super Bowl. Two old guys going at it. It'll feature 38-year-old Philip Rivers against 38-year-old Ben Roethlisberger. Truth is, both teams are fringe Super Bowl contenders if the quarterbacks can stay healthy. The Colts and the Steelers are plus 1,200 to come out of the AFC. Only the Chiefs, Ravens, and Bills and Patriots have better odds. So this could have major playoff implications toward the end of the year. Week 5, Bills at Titans, Sunday, October 11th, 1 p.m. This is a fun matchup. If you are a football nerd, expectations are high for the Bills after a busy offseason that included a blockbuster trade for Stephon Diggs. The Titans are coming off a season in which they were one game away from the Super Bowl. The matchup between the Titans offense and the Bills defense will have all 22 junkies salivating. Bills coach Sean McDermott has become one of the best defensive coaches in the NFL. Not many offense coordinators were more creative last year than Tennessee's Arthur Smith, so it could be an interesting matchup right there. Week 2, Saints at Raiders, Monday, September 21st, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. We don't know what it will look like or what travel restrictions will be in place. The Raiders' first game in Las Vegas has to make the list, as it is the first NFL game in Las Vegas. So that's the only reason that's on the list. Is also against the Saints. It could be a good measuring stick for the Las Vegas Raiders. Week 7, Browns at Bengals, Sunday, October 25th, 1 p.m. This could be an interesting divisional matchup. You could see Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow should be in full swing. He should be adjusted to the speed of the NFL, so this could be a breakout party for him. And also you get to see Baker Mayfield, see if he does better with those upgrades at both tackles, and they held on to OBJ and all that. Then Week 6, Lions at Jaguars, Sunday, October 18th, 1 p.m. This is a canceled international game, but this is a canceled game that was going to play in London originally. So this could be a huge tank bowl here for Trevor Lawrence. Ideally, they'd be playing in December, but Week 6 is generally when the two fan bases look ahead to next year anyways. The Jaguars are among the worst teams, and they already have 2 first-round picks in 2021. Meanwhile, Matt Patricia and the Lions have won 9 games in the past 2 years. You could have a potential Gardner Minshew leads the Jaguars to a late comeback victory, and the Lions go on to finish with the worst record, and then they could trade the pick to someone. Who knows? The Lions are who knows. But those are some interesting games on the NFL schedule. It goes from the best of the best to possible tank bowl. So when we come back, we'll be discussing Cam Newton. Why is he not signed yet? When we come back.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
So we've discussed it on here before. The quarterback market in the NFL this offseason was intense. It was insane. You had Tom Brady, you had Phillip Rivers moving, you had Drew Brees potentially retiring, stuff like that. One thing that kind of went under the radar was Cam Newton getting cut, which is insane because Cam Newton was MVP in 2015. He's had some injury issues the past 2 years, but if he is fully healthy, he can still be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And frankly, you have a couple teams that needed a really good quarterback. You have a couple teams that could have used Cam Newton, at least in a backup role, but he has not been signed yet. And it's really kind of baffling. I just kind of want to talk it out real quick. But tomorrow, May 11th, he turns 31 years old. It's going to be his first birthday in a long time. He won't be representing a team. So he's currently unemployed. There are a few reasons for that. He's been injured the past 2 seasons. He attempted to play through one of those injuries, which was his shoulder, while the other, his foot, limited his skills, and the Panthers had to shut him down. Because of the unusual circumstances surrounding COVID-19, no team has been able to bring Newton into their facility to give him a physical and discuss what's next for his career, which that might be the main reason he has not been signed, because no team really knows how healthy Cam Newton is. And if the Panthers didn't think he was healthy enough, then why should other teams think he's healthy enough? I mean, the Panthers couldn't trade him to the Bears. I mean, the Bears overpaid for Nick Foles when they could have easily overpaid for Cam Newton, which I think if they offered the same thing for Cam Newton, it wouldn't be overpaying, in my opinion, but whatever. The other factor in Newton's unemployment status is that most every NFL team has what they believe is a better option at quarterback, someone they committed draft capital or financial assets to. As a result, those teams are reluctant to make a change. They'd rather be wrong with their guy than right with someone new. Being a free agent potential starting quarterback is like playing musical chairs, and right now the music has stopped for Cam with no chair available. So we need to understand that Newton sees himself as a starter in the NFL. He is right to view himself that way. He deserves to get paid starter money or near starter money based on his overall performance in his career. His cap number of $21 million was reasonable had the injuries not cast doubt. When the Panthers' new head coach, Matt Rule, took over in Carolina, Rule needed to instill his culture, and with Newton's health concerns and just 1 year left on his deal, it was best for the Panthers to start over without him. With a new coach and new rules, the injured always fall by the wayside, and once released from Carolina and with the draft pending, there are only a few spots for Newton to land. Prior injuries are a legitimate issue and a red flag, yet when viewing Newton's overall career, he has always answered the bell come game time. He has been durable, missing just 5 games in his career before that foot injury sidelined him for the season. He withstands tremendous hits, always gets back on his feet, never stops running with the ball. Last season, when he missed 14 games, and the 2016 season where were the only 2 years of his career when Newton had fewer than 100-plus carries. Along the way, he amassed 58 rushing touchdowns in his career. That's tied for 6th on the NFL active rushing leaders list. Once he can get appropriately examined, there is no doubt in my mind that Newton will be healthier than ever and ready to roll. Injuries prevented him from getting a chair in this year's starting quarterback dance. That won't happen again once he is cleared to play. So the reasons for his unemployment are of course, complex, layered, lacking in common sense. Don't ever think that NFL teams always make common sense decisions or don't have personal agendas in place that prevent them from making smart decisions. So take the Chicago Bears, for example. They traded a 4th-round pick for Jacksonville quarterback Nick Foles. They now inherit Foles' contract that had $17 million in guaranteed money in 2020, but they moved the guarantee into future seasons. So in essence, Foles get all the money owed to him, and the Bears get some cap relief. In addition to the cap relief, the Bears get a less threatening quarterback challenger to incumbent Mitchell Trubisky. Newton would walk in Chicago locker room, and every player on the team would immediately feel he is the man. There would be no doubt. From day one, Newton would endear himself to his teammates, leaving Trubisky with zero chance to compete, which is not what the Bears want. They want to challenge Trubisky, but only in a kind, polite way. By the way, if Foles isn't the starter, the Bears will have themselves a very expensive backup with guaranteed money because of the way they structured his deal this year and next. With Foles, they acquired an easygoing person who knows the coaches on the staff and who won't ruffle feathers. Foles is a nice guy. He plays well within a certain system, but when he does play, he has injury and consistency concerns. In fact, Foles has never played 16 games in any one season during his 8-year career. His career numbers compared to Newton are entirely inferior. The Bears could have easily taken Newton instead of Foles, yet they chose comfort and familiarity. They did not choose the better player. Now, you could say Cam does not fit the Bears' offense. Well, what is the Bears' offense under head coach Matt Nagy? Last year they finished 28th, or lower in 20 offensive categories, and had just 8 touchdowns rushing all season. They averaged under 10 yards per catch and did not have a running back who averaged over 4 yards a carry. The Bears' offense consists of bubble screens, throwing the ball sideways, hoping the receivers or backs make the first person miss. It's all finesse, all deception, all trickery. For a team that plays in the rugged, windy city with cold weather and heavy grass, they lack the punch-you-in-the-mouth style. They would rather shift, motion, or even throw a double pass for 4 yards than just line up and say, "We are tougher than you." So last season, Trubisky threw the ball over 7.4 yards per attempt in 4 games. The Bears won all 4 of those games, albeit 2 were against the Lions and the other 2 came against bad pass defense of the Redskins and the Cowboys. The Chiefs' offense, which is supposed to be the model for the Bears' offense as Nagy was the offense coordinator in Kansas City, is nothing like the Bears. Yes, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, but even Mahomes-less games when journeyman Matt Moore took over, the Chiefs averaged 7.24 yards per attempt. The simple fact is, despite Nagy's experience in Kansas City, there are 0 similarities in how the Bears attack offensively versus how the Chiefs attack. So the facts are simple. The Bears don't want Newton because he poses a threat to their predetermined quarterback race. Clearly, the Bears want Trubisky to be their opening day starter. Forget all this talk about open competition. That's just talking. The only way Trubisky loses his job in Chicago is if he plays himself out of the job during the first month of the season, not before. The Bears' reluctance to bring in a high-profile locker room favorite is the same reason the Redskins took Kyle Allen over him. Skins head coach Ron Rivera knows Newton is better than Dwayne Haskins right now, but he needs to allow Haskins the time to prove himself one way or the other. Newton would dominate the locker room. He would instantly command the respect of the other players, thus keeping Haskins uncomfortable. And like the Bears, Washington does not want to make Haskins or owner Dan Snyder, the man behind the selection of Haskins, uncomfortable. So if Chicago or Washington isn't a fit, then what about the Jags, who clearly, I love Gardner Minshew. I love him so much. He's perfect for Jacksonville, but he cannot be the long-term answer as of right now for Jacksonville. They were looking to potentially move up in the draft to draft someone new. So the Jaguars, they will be running a West Coast offense under new offense coordinator Jay Gruden, which is not an offense that Newton has ever been involved with during his career in the NFL. But the Jags QB's room is a former 6th-round pick Gardner Minshew, former Steeler Joshua Dobbs, and Mike Glennon, who they signed on Friday and to add some veteran presence. You can love Minshew all you want based on his 12 games as a starter, but there's 0 chance his skill set is beyond that of Cam Newton's. The Jags would have a big-time player in Newton, a player the fans could rally to see each week, and since they will be playing 8 home games in Jacksonville, the Jags need all the stars they can acquire. But as the Glennon signing shows, they're fine with the status quo, and they don't actually intend to be very competitive. The Jags not signing Newton makes 0 sense. It makes no sense, unless they'd rather tank and get the first pick in the draft in 2021, which would perhaps allow them to acquire Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. Some might say even the Jags have a better quarterback situation than the Patriots, since Minshew started 12 games and Jarrett Stidham hasn't started any. But the Patriots have a much better team around Stidham, which will help their chances of making him successful. Still, Stidham is an unproven fourth-round pick who is believed to be a potential starter, and veteran Brian Hoyer as the backup. They also have very little cap room. Most of their dead cap money lies with players not currently on the roster, from Tom Brady to Antonio Brown to Steven Gostkowski. The Pats are in salary cap jail. They have two choices: either redo offensive guard Joe Thuney's franchise deal, or bite the bullet and wait until next season when they have upwards to almost $100 million of room. Still, if Newton's medical and price tag aligns with the Patriots salary cap thinking, I would never rule them out as a potential suitor. Newton could play well in New England. He would have to accept the structure and culture, but his love of football and his love of winning would allow him to adapt. However, the timing is just not right. The Patriots don't know his medicals, and they don't have starter money to pay. So the best thing for Cam Newton to do right now is to wait. Wait for an opening. Wait for a team to come to their senses, realize their plan is not working, wait for an injury or something. Many projected starting quarterbacks in April or May will flame out in August or September. Then Cam will be in demand. I definitely see him being a signing around week 5 or so here in the NFL, whenever week 5 is in the NFL season. But when we come back, we'll do our draft recap of the Detroit Lions when we return.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, everyone, we are continuing with part 3 of our NFL draft recaps. We are here for the number 3 pick of the overall draft, the Detroit Lions. And the Lions, they are kind of under turmoil lately because, they've had 2 pretty disappointing years. But this draft was the opportunity for them to kind of jump back, get into competitiveness with a big-time corner chosen, a kind of underrated running back they got a couple of offensive guards and a couple of D linemen to kind of help out as well. So there's a lot of speculation about the Lions here. There's a lot of speculation that they're going to trade back. There's some speculation they might surprise everybody and take a quarterback to replace Matthew Stafford, which would have just been bonkers to me. But the fact of the matter is, the Lions, they are a mediocre team right now, but they had 9 selections in this draft, so they had a huge chance to make everything better. Their defense was atrocious last year, I believe, and so let's get into it. So their first pick, first round, 3rd overall, was Jeff Okudah, I forgot how to say it. Cornerback from Ohio State. He's 6'1", 205 pounds, 4.48 40-yard dash, 41-inch vertical. The consensus pre-draft favorite for the Lions came to fruition. I can't talk for right now. Second best non-quarterback prospect in the draft. His value at 3rd overall is passable. However, it's not typical that corners are drafted in the top 3 in the draft. Last time a corner went in the first 3 picks was in 1997. It's not much of a reach, though, considering the player Okudah projects to be at the next level. In the last 20 years, there have been 7 corners selected in picks 4 through 7. Given that the NFL is a passing league, there are plenty of reaches in the first round by other teams to grab a cover man. It would have been nice to see a trade down a couple of spots and still grab Okudah, but no firm offers were ever received in order for the Lions to move back, so the Lions stood pat and took the best player available. So for the Lions' man press scheme, Okudah is the perfect match. He has the longest wingspan of any defensive back at the combine and has some of the quickest feet at the position. His hips fluidity is unmatched and will translate well at the next level. Next up, your second round pick, 35th overall, they took DeAndre Swift, running back from Georgia. He's 5'8", 212 pounds, 4.48, 40-yard dash, 35.5-inch vertical. There are two school of thoughts when it comes to running back. The position doesn't matter as long as the team has an offensive line, or you need an elite running back to cover blocking flaws. Both philosophies can also be true. With Swift, he may be the most complete running back in the class. He is slightly above average size and contact balance, above average speed and agility, and above average ability in the passing game. Combine all those traits, you have a true 3-down running back here. Despite being able to do it all, Swift has never been a real workhorse at the college level. In his 43 games played, there's only been 3 games where he had 20-plus carries in a game. That could be a good thing with less wear and tear. With his opportunities, he averaged 6.56 yards per carry. His yards per carry mark was highest in school history, which is super impressive considering that Georgia is pretty much a running back factory, especially recently. Much like fellow Lions running back Kerryon Johnson, Swift never missed much time due to injuries at the SEC level, but both had their fair share of nagging injuries throughout their collegiate career. Overall, Swift will likely be in a committee to start his career with some nice potential to give the Lions a real threat out of the backfield. However, you had another running back that was also available, which was Jonathan Taylor. So that, they could have taken Jonathan Taylor as well. So, I mean, that they both could be the exact same player pretty much, but it could have went a different way. Third round pick, 67th. I can't talk right now. So close to the end, I can't talk. Third round, 67th overall, Julian Okwara, edge from Notre Dame, 6'4", 252 pounds. He did 27 bench reps. For the first time in a long time, the Lions will have an edge rusher that is actually an elite athlete. He has long arms, really uses them well to convert speed to power and pass rush. According to Pro Football Focus, since 2018 among NCAA edge defenders, Okwara is the 5th best pass rush win rate percentage. The Lions' defensive scheme is always heavily prioritized stopping the run over pass rush ability. His run defense is one aspect that he will need to improve on. He only had 2.7% run stop rate in 2019, among worst in the class. He can struggle to take on blocks and holding on the edge. Not to pile on, but he's also missed 17 tackles on 64 attempts over the past 2 seasons. Considering his size, he will likely start his career as a pass rush specialist in the stand-up jackbacker role. Honestly, even though he didn't do much in college, he has the fluidity to even line up off the ball if needed. His pass rush potential in the third round, the Lions got to steal. Pass rushers that can get to the quarterback don't come cheap. You do see some concerns about how he hold up against the run, but in a pass-happy league, considering the Lions' desperate need at the position, you take the good with the bad. Third round, 75th overall, Jonah Jackson, interior lineman from Ohio State. I can't read either for some reason. 6'3", 306 pounds, 5.23 second 40-yard dash, 28 bench reps. He was a graduate transfer from Rutgers, chose to go to Ohio State to play against top competition. He's experienced playing both guard spots and at center. They traded up to get him to make sure they would come away with at least one interior lineman to contend for the starting right guard spot. Jackson is more of a technician and a savvy vet than he is powerful or athletic. At 306 pounds, he doesn't necessarily move people in the ground game, but he finds a way to get the job done. He excels in pass protection. He only allowed 1 sack or quarterback hit over his last 2 seasons. With great balance and exceptional hand usage, Jackson is extremely difficult to get past. He was a team captain at Rutgers, highly respected at Ohio State. He definitely fits the Lions' personality profile. Fourth round, 121st overall pick, Logan Stenberg. Another interior offensive lineman from Kentucky, 6'6", 317 pounds, 5.30 second 40-yard dash, a 4.82 second 20-yard shuffle. Back-to-back offensive guards really improved the Lions' offensive line potential. A first-team All-SEC player in 2019, can't read. Stenberg was voted the most disliked player in the SEC. The perfect demeanor for a guard, uses his big frame to drive defenders, and will play to the whistle every play. He's a little too aggressive at times. He had 14 penalties in 2019 alone. He's not labeled as a pass blocker. He didn't allow a single sack over the last 2 seasons. Important to note, in Kentucky's run-heavy offense, he was rarely put in traditional pass blocking situations. He won't be forced into a starting role unless the Lions get bit by the injury bug, but they're putting an emphasis on interior offensive linemen. But there could have been better players available at this position. So, 5th round, 166 overall, Quintez Cephas, wide receiver, Wisconsin, 6'1", 202 pounds, 4.73 40-yard dash, 38.5-inch vertical. He's fast. They're in desperate need of players who can separate. But, he's not fast, and the Lions need a player who can separate, and Cephas is not one of those. He's an unathletic wide receiver overcoming and finding success in the NFL. There are a few examples like Anquan Bolden and Jarvis Landry, but those are the exceptions, not the norm. Cephas was a 5th round selection. He does all the little things very well, whether it be blocking, making catches in traffic, beating press coverage, or being fearless going over the middle. The redshirt junior embraces the nuance and physicality of the game, much like Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. Cephas is somewhat a deep threat because of his body control and strong hands. Speaking of his hands, he does come down with some difficult catches, but he will have to focus. He will have a focus drop here or there. 5th round, 172nd overall, Jason Huntley, running back / kick returner out of New Mexico State. He's 5'9", 193 pounds, 4.37 second 40-yard dash. Huntley was one of the couple of players in the entire draft that no one really knew anything about. They already got a running back in this draft. They already have Kerryon Johnson as well. So why would they get a smaller running back? But Huntley is an electric player, could provide the Lions a replacement to Theo Riddick, gadget back role, and also line up in the slot. You don't really see how he sees the field unless he supplants Jamal Agnew at kick returner or running back Ty Johnson. He has some speed. He provides some speed to a relatively slow offense, but overall that's kind of a head-scratching pick right there. John Pennicini, defensive tackle, Utah, 6th round, 197th overall, 6'1", 318 pounds. He is he's a former rugby player, went to JUCO route for the first 2 seasons. He finished the 2nd team all Pac-12 defensive tackle in the last 2 years. Has 5 career sacks at the FBS level. Even with his size, he can struggle to push the pocket. He's a rotational piece. Could be a decent pick. Deshaun Cornell, D lineman, Ohio State, 7th round, 235th overall pick, and this is their last one. Pretty meh. It's the 7th round, but at least take a late round flyer on a player with some upside. Cornell wasn't invited to the NFL Combine, and it would be difficult to find a publication that gave him a draftable grade. Cornell is a defensive end and a tackle tweener. He has some okay lateral agility for a defensive tackle, but isn't much of a threat as a pass rusher. So basically my overall thing is that first half of this draft, first 4 rounds, pretty good for the Lions. Second half, it was kind of a bunch of head scratchers with Cephas, Huntley, Pensini, and then Cornell. Some interesting draft picks in the second half of this draft. But that is it for this show, for the Sunday show, everyone. Hope you enjoy The Last Dance tonight, episodes 7 and 8 tonight. And hope you enjoy your Mother's Day. Get your mother something nice. And talk to y'all on Tuesday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.